Welcome to Backyard Cigars. Anniversary cigars are abundant in the cigar industry. Some are incredibly good, and others are just average, not worthy of an anniversary. But today we're going to find out if My Father Cigars has perfected the art of introducing limited release anniversary cigars. Are they doing it better than anyone else? Or are they just doing the same thing? Let's see if it stands out, and let's take a closer look at this cigar. Welcome to a closer look with Backyard Cigars. And what we're seeing here in this cigar, 6.5 by 52, Toro size, Toro Vitola, is a beautiful looking cigar with a beautiful looking band, honoring the legacy of the Dom Pepin line. And this Colorado Habano 2000 Corojo wrapper is really nice looking. Really nice looking. As you can see there. And we're talking about Nicaraguan binder, Nicaraguan filler, with some Pelo de Oro, which we're going to touch base on a little later. We're going to touch base on the Pelo de Oro. I've had this a year in the humidor. It's actually a year and a month. 64 to 66 RH. It's got that really nice footband here. Let's take another look at the crown on this. And it's a beautiful looking band. Let me bring it up even closer. 20 years, limited edition, but there were 100,000 of these made, so this is still obtainable, you know. The only one thing about it is really the price. Jaime Pepin Garcia, it's his autograph. It's gorgeous. It's really nice. And when you talk about Don Pepin, My Father Cigars and their limited edition cigar bands, in comparison to Y Picarillo's bands, you got Fuente, of course, with his opulent bands. These are some of they're legacy based, right? When you look at them, they're very traditional legacy based and so forth, but they stand out and they make a cigar look special, which is what you want. Let's see if it smokes as special as it looks. Now that you've had a closer look at the cigar, we're going to talk a little bit about what's in it, right? But before we even get to that, because really this isn't gonna be one of those videos where we talk a lot about anniversary cigars. We know why they exist. We know why they are well loved on occasion, and we know why sometimes they go from limited release to regular production, because they sell well and they're successful, and that's the idea. But sometimes it's gotta stay limited for the obvious reasons: the procurement of certain tobaccos, the amount of time and effort that goes into certain cigars in regards to the overall process and the packaging. Sometimes price is a big part of that as well, because Regular production of a 40 to $50 cigar isn't always going to be a big seller for you, but it can be. Just ask Padron. There's really not much going on here just yet. It's been lit, not into the first inch. I think we need to let it develop. At the 1 inch mark, and I've got to say, so far I'm liking the cigar. Past grievances aside, with specific lines of the anniversary cigars that have been released by my father cigars, Jaime Garcia, this one has started off in a way that is pleasing to me. I like the soft earth tones. I like the little zings of pepper. I like that it's a true medium, but on the lighter side of medium. And I also like the fact that it is burning really well. The construction on this cigar is really good. The draw is perfect. And what else can I say about it? I mean, the flavors that I'm getting, some of the toasty barrel type notes that you would get, and I like the way it's smoking right now. Yeah, there's a certain flavor to it. Now, let's get into one of the highlighted reasons why this cigar is or has been deemed special by the Garcia family. And one of the reasons is the use of Pelo de Oro tobacco. Pelo de Oro is a strain of tobacco that was grown in Cuba in the 1930s. Now, for all of you wondering how I get information in regards to tobacco strains, tobacco seeds, and hybrids, and all of that, is I basically read and watch anything that Ernest Gokaj writes or speaks. I basically do that because Ernest is the director of tobacco procurement for the Scandinavian Tobacco Group under General Cigar, and he's an agriculturist. I meant to say that correctly. He is not a big cigar smoker, but he's just knowledgeable about what tobacco should look like, should taste like, and how it should grow properly, and in regards to its climate, the soil conditions, everything like that. Ernest Gokaj is gonna know. Now, I'm always stuttering with his last name because I want to get it right, but I don't always. So forgive me if, Ernest, you ever happen to watch this and say, hey, kid, that guy get my last name correct. He's of Albanian descent, and he is just a wonderful, wonderful man. When I hear him speak, when I hear him talk about things, I just want to sit back, light a cigar, and let him proceed. So I basically learn a lot from Ernest Gokaj because I want to know more about the tobaccos that are being used in the cigars that I like. And then in turn, I have the opportunity to share that information with you. Whether you want to know about it or not, it's an important part of the tobacco making process, right? Of the cigar making process, because selecting the right tobaccos is, from what I've seen, a lot harder to do than most people might imagine. You might imagine that you grow a large field, you have a large field of tobacco growing, and with experts at the helm, you're going to get the results you want. And that isn't always the case, right? Because we have diseases that affect tobacco varieties and all kinds of other things that influence the tobacco, and in part, in a large part, will that can be expressed in the final product. So with Pelo de Oro, which I've smoked many cigars, many, and I'm sure you guys have too, many cigars that have talked about we are using a certain amount of Pelo de Oro in this special blend. I didn't mean to air quote that, but sometimes we just don't know how much of it is used, and I can assure you that it's not a lot. Although two particular cigar makers are very well known for using a substantial amount, and there's a reason for that. So the Garcia family being one, and then you have AJ Fernandez. AJ Fernandez also grows Pelo de Oro in Nicaragua. The Garcia family started growing Pelo de Oro in Nicaragua, I believe in Esteli, in 2007. Jaime Garcia was developing that crop, and I think at this point they're almost at 50 acres of Pelo de Oro. And the difficulty in growing Pelo de Oro is in the diseases, because it is not a hardy variety. That's one of the reasons why it isn't grown in Cuba and hasn't been for nearly 100 years, because it yields a small crop and it's troublesome. It's just not worth it. Is it a very good tobacco? It is an excellent tobacco. I think I'm getting a lot of the Pelo de Oro influence in this cigar. Pelo de Oro offers a certain type of sweetness and a certain type of potency in its ligero leaves that you just can't find in modern tobaccos or hybrids. We find that with Pelo de Oro, if enough of it is used, it can influence the blend significantly, but at a cost. Because, again, it's expensive to grow, expensive to maintain. It requires a lot of vigilance. You have to really look out. Look, 1930s, I believe it's the black shank disease. If I'm not correct about that particular disease, I'll note it. But that disease affected the growing of Pelo de Oro. And so it was abandoned, and it became an abandoned seed. And to this day, it's technically a retired seed. But Jaime Garcia and the Garcia family are growing Pelo de Oro from the original Cuban seeds. That makes it that much more special. So we look at the Garcia family, and how they've even expanded growing Pelo de Oro in Jalapa. And they feel that Nicaragua is a perfect home for this seed. And so they use it in limited quantities for their special cigars. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know the ratios, but I do like what I'm tasting in this cigar. There's a certain mineral note that I'm getting from this cigar. I've been getting it from the beginning, I just couldn't place it. And now I've kind of identified it. It's like a stone fruit mineral note. And it's not displeasing, but it's kind of distracting me from other flavors. Jaime Garcia believes that Pelo de Oro provides a boost to a blend. It adds a kick of potency, as I mentioned before, and it adds a hint of that sweetness that one may or may not pick up. I haven't gotten much sweetness from this cigar. Hints along the way. but it also has a very old-fashioned feel to it. And that might just be the overall blending process for the Garcia family. They blend old-fashioned like cigars, traditional, but yet incorporating, like many others, modern techniques. In growing Pelo de Oro, they have to use the available technology to make it work. Because if not, it just won't grow right and it will be plagued, literally. So I think that's part of why a cigar like this will be priced much higher than it should be. Why do I say that? Well, because this is a $40 cigar. And it just seems like today a lot of cigar makers are itching to put out what is being referred to lately and for quite some time as the uber premium selection cigars. And that market, that uber selection premium cigar market, probably targeting the cigar smokers with heftier wallets or more more disposable income, and that's not a bad thing, right? But is it really worth the $40? And that's something that we have to ask ourselves when we taste a cigar and we see, when we know what we paid for it. We know that we paid much more than the average cigar, right? Much more. I mean, I remember when the anniversary cigars from my father's cigars were $20, $22, $25. And then all of a sudden there was this jump, not just for my father's cigars, but for a lot of other cigar makers, introducing $40 cigars. You had Maya Selva in Honduras introducing the Zodiac cigars, and for that matter, any other company like the Plasencias, anybody else introducing Zodiac cigars and pricing them at $40, $50. Davidoff has always been putting out cigars that cost $40, $50, if not more, right? But they're known for that. They're known for being somewhat of the epitome of luxury. They have their own legacy. Even though they're not a Cuban brand per se, they have roots within the Cuban industry. And they, of course, have a name, and they charge accordingly. Some of us might disagree on just how good some of those cigars are, but we can all agree that Davidoff, represents excellence within this cigar industry, as does my father. One would say, if not more so, because they're a true legacy family in the sense that, Don Pepin was a Cuban master, still is. Not was, still is, but you know what I mean. He was a Cuban master in Cuba. And Jaime has followed in the footsteps, as well as his daughter. Her name escapes me right now, I apologize. But look, how good the cigar is versus how much you pay for it, well, that can be subjective. Until it's not. And then you just have to make up your mind if this is worth $40 for you. I sense sometimes that my viewers want to know if it's worth the purchase. And I try to provide guidance on that, but I don't want to be the deciding factor, because some of you may have had this cigar and you didn't like it and you weren't impressed and you weren't wowed. And I've been there. And some of you try the cigar and say, hey, this is worth it. It's good. It's really good. My take on this, I'm going to give it towards the end, of course, as I always do, because, is still a lot of cigar to smoke. But look, Pelo de Oro is special, and it's worthy of charging a little bit more for in a cigar that has it. But it has to be worth my while, and it has to be worth your while. if we're going to thoroughly enjoy a rare tobacco, then I think it has to make a significant impact on the blend. Everything I'm getting from this cigar screams excellence, screams well made, pronounces itself as the special cigar that it looks like, right? It looks like a special cigar, it feels like a special cigar, and it tastes like a special cigar. But again, a cigar can transition in many ways, and sometimes you can have a great first half, very much like some NFL teams that play a great first half and then just come back after halftime and, really don't perform as well. These are things that we know and that comes with the territory when we're smoking cigars. But when we're smoking really expensive cigars, it becomes a little bit more important. How the cigar performs from start to finish becomes much, much more important. I love the band on this. Of course, if you're sitting in a cigar lounge and you're smoking a cigar with a band like this, one can easily assume you paid a pretty penny for it. And it's ultra cool in the way that it presents itself. And it's got a fantastic looking Habano 2000 Corojo wrapper. And I love Corojo. And it's one of these types of cigars that you look at and it's impressive. It's impressive to look at. I had my doubts, as I've mentioned before, being critical of previous anniversary releases from my father. Doesn't matter if it's Don Pepin or if it's Jaime. This one is to honor the Don Pepin line, 20 years of the Don Pepin line, which was actually last year. If you look, you're going to find most of the reviews on this cigar occurred last year in 2023. And here I am, a year and a month later, after having purchased the cigar, and I'm doing the review now. So it's gotten to age, it's rested a year in the humidor, and again, some subtle differences will occur in a year's time, but I think overall, Don Pepin's and my father's cigars, Garcia family cigars, they're all very good. Some age better than others, but mainly they're just good to go from the moment you buy them. You don't need to age them. That mineral note isn't really bothering me anymore, and it's kind of faded a bit. And it's just given way to a nice earthy pepper, soft, toasted, nutty notes. You get a sense that you're smoking old world tobacco, old-fashioned tobacco. I know some of you watching this are probably not as old as I am or as old as other cigar smokers that remember what it was like to smoke cigars in the 80s and 90s. And tobacco has changed. It just changes from generation to generation. I've talked about how cigar smokers in the 1920s and 30s experienced a shift in what they were familiar with from the early 1900s. And those very same cigar smokers in the 20s and 30s experienced another change in the 40s and the 50s. And so on and so on. And it's just like every other industry and every other thing that we encounter. It changes. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Crops are crops, right? It's hard to be consistent with them. The very best cigar makers are very well equipped to make cigars, their tobacco and their cigars, consistent in terms of profile, in terms of the way that their crops grow and so forth, and everything that goes into that. It isn't unlike other things that you have to, depend on with crops, like with wine in the wine industry, or even something like the cannabis industry. Although the cannabis industry can grow indoors successfully. And a lot of people say, well, why can't you do the same for tobacco? Grow it indoors. It just doesn't work the same. It's different, and it's not the same. And I don't want to get into that right now because I'll ramble on a long talk that'll probably take me 20 minutes, and I'll geek out over it, and you'll get bored. So I'll just continue with this cigar. I'm at that point where soon I'm gonna have to remove the band. As much as I don't want to do that, I'm gonna have to, because it's a beautiful band and I want to keep it on as long as I can. And I'm not able to slide it. Sometimes I'm able to, slide it up a little bit so we can keep it on the cigar longer. This one's kind of tight and it's not really cooperating. So I actually had a moment where I tugged at it just gently enough, because one is always concerned you're going to rip off some wrapper if it's too tight. And I was able to do it successfully and move the band up just slightly so that I could keep it on the cigar as I worked my way. And it's that earthy pepper. There's the nuttiness and the hints. Remember what I said about the second half? Well, it seems the Garcias are not playing so well this half. And, as I head into the final third, and well into the final third, actually, I'm finding that the flavors are falling a bit flat. That mineral note kind of keeps popping up, and it's just not as pleasing in the finish. And the earthy pepperiness is okay, but when you get it in huge doses, it becomes a little boring. But it's not a bad cigar. Not at all, not by a stretch. It's been largely enjoyable. The strength of the cigar has gradually increased, and you do get a good bit of that nicotine strength. It comes and goes, but I mean, this is not something of a powerhouse cigar in any way, despite what one may know about the Pelo de Oro giving it a boost. It doesn't really give it a full-bodied effect. It's medium-bodied, medium strength, medium flavor. So I think it's time for me to give you my take on it overall in regards to value, quality, everything. I said it was not a bad cigar. Good cigar, yes. Is it pleasing throughout the whole cigar? No. I like to think that it was very pleasing to the first half of the cigar, and the second half so far has really fallen flat for me. And I said that before, but I'm gonna repeat that and punctuate that by saying this is not worth $40. No. At best, I'd say, because of the anniversary and the rare tobacco being used, maybe 20. But the reality is you're not going to find it at $20. Not these special anniversary cigars anyway. You're just not going to find it anymore. So you've got to make the choice. If you want to plunk down $40 for this special anniversary cigar that is using Pelo de Oro. Now, if you want to try Pelo de Oro in other cigars, you can look for AJ Fernandez cigars that contain Pelo de Oro. And as we know, AJ Fernandez rarely strikes out. He's just, I'm not trying to say that AJ Fernandez is better than my father, Don Pepin, Jaime, or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm sure there's friendly competition, but I just think that with AJ sometimes you're going to find a lower cost cigar and some of the aging room cigars that he has blended for other he's blended for other companies, aging room being one of them, and a countless number of other cigars that he's used Pelo de Oro in the blend, can probably give you just as much, if not more, satisfaction than this particular $40 cigar. And then you have to decide, as I said before. You watch reviews, you read things, and I would hope you try to determine, based off of the information you collect, if it's worthy of the purchase. Now, if you're purchasing blindly, well, you're going to run into some mistakes. And mistakes happen. I have bought many cigars that I regretted buying and paying what I paid for them. Sometimes you do the research and you still come away not liking the blend and not really feeling wowed and not feeling you got the value for your money. But the quality is here. It's here. But having precious tobaccos, having tradition and legacy, and having all of those things at your disposal does not equate to a highly enjoyable cigar. As much as we may want that to be the case, it just isn't. And cigar makers, I think at heart they know this, but sometimes they're gonna give it their shot and they're gonna give it their go. Not much sweetness, nutty, toasted flavors, earthy pepper, subtle pepper zings along the way. Not something that I would classify as not enjoyable, just not highly enjoyable. And taking into account the price is something that you have to question. But I'm going to leave you with this, and that is that as long as cigar makers are continuing to develop and harvest exceptional crops and work their way towards perfecting blends and giving us uniformity in their blends, we can rejoice in that. Because if they're not trying is when you have to worry. When there aren't any good crops growing or being developed is when you have to worry. So the progress that is being made within the cigar industry in regards to their tobacco crops is always encouraging, and it's always a good thing to smoke a special cigar. So I leave you with that, and I want to just thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this review of an anniversary cigar from my father cigars, Jaime and Don Pepin, at it again. Thank you so much. Till next time on Backyard Cigars.